Before we officially get started off in this conversation, let me give credit where credit is due. About 4 years ago, a man by the name of Kevin Samuels sat in front of a camera. He was up on live stream, candle burning, fragrance wafting through the air, laying out a vision for the future. He called it at the time, Winter is Coming. All right. If you go to his channel, the video is still live. Now, when he said winter is coming, he's not talking about weather. Effectively, he was talking about an economic as well as a social reset that was heading our way. A reset that most people were not prepared for, or they just simply weren't paying attention to what was happening around them, or they just didn't want to hear about it. Since then, Kevin has passed away, and a lot of people wrote him off while he was alive, right? They called him harsh. They called him divisive. They called him a chauvinist, right? You know, all the terms. But what they could not call him was wrong. And 4 years later, not only did winter come, but it set up shop, all right? It set up camp. Now, what fascinates me about today and what Kevin did not see coming, and that's with full respect, all right? But a lot of us didn't see this coming, was the AI piece. He didn't account for how artificial intelligence was going to come and pour gasoline on the fire that was already burning at high octane. So that's what I want this conversation to be about, right? While giving tribute to what it is that he called out and so clear, right? He translated it for us so clear back into the day. But this is going to be Winter is Coming 2.0 because the storm has gotten worse. And if you thought that the first wave is bad, AI is making it way worse. So let's have this conversation, all right? So in order to kick this off, let me ask you guys something. When is the last time that y'all looked at the stock market and felt like your life was as good as what the stock market is currently being represented as, okay? Because it's wild to think about. The stock market keeps on going up, right? And at the same time, people everywhere continue to complain about cost, about how expensive everything is, that groceries are going up, that gas is going up, rent is up. And at the same time, more and more people are losing their jobs. And it doesn't really make any sense until you double click into exactly what is happening. The companies that make up the stock market, they're hitting all their numbers. All right, all-time highs. They're generating the revenue. They're still impressing all of the shareholders up at the shareholders meeting. All right. And they're doing it with fewer and fewer and fewer people. Less workforce, more automation, more AI.
That entry-level jobs in areas like finance, consulting, tech, many other areas like that, entry-level white-collar work. I worry that those things are going to be first augmented, but before long replaced by AI systems, and that we may indeed. It's hard to predict the future, but we may indeed have a serious employment crisis on our hands as the pipeline for these early stage white collar work starts to contract and dry up.
And when a company has the opportunity to cut employees, a couple of hundred, a few thousand employees, and replace them with software that doesn't need workers' compensation, they never take sick days, and they never complain, the stock effectively will continue to rise while the unemployment rate will go up at the very same time. And this is not effectively a bug in the system. It's a feature of this technological progression. All right. If you take a look at the S&P 500, it continues to reach record highs, but the employment rate seems to be ticking up at the same time as well. So the divergence of these two things happening at the same time means that the economy, while it is doing great, GDP is doing what it needs to do, the bottom, the working people in the economy are becoming hollowed out. I was actually just taking a look at a McKinsey report that said that AI and automation could displace like 350 million jobs in the next 5 years globally. Jack Dorsey, who is the head of the company Square, he used to own Twitter. He just announced that they're cutting roughly half of its workforce, like 4,000, 5,000 employees, in order to hedge against what's coming. And that's not just trimming the fat. 50% reduction in workforce represents something. And it is big tech saying out loud that, hey, listen, we don't need humans the same way that we did anymore. And this is effectively a dime a dozen, because across all of technology, finance, media, healthcare, admin, even legal, right? These companies are running the exact same playbook. Bring in the tools, the AI tools, reduce the headcount, because the headcount is the most expensive thing in a majority of these organizations, to improve margins, right? The difference between the revenue that's coming in and the cost that it takes to run the business. And then you effectively report record earnings. Then the stock of it goes up. And the people who used to sit in these organizations and fill these seats, they go back up to LinkedIn and they're updating their profiles and their resumes, and they're finding it more and more difficult to find a next place to work at. And that's where we are at right now. Now, the interesting thing about AI is the types of jobs that it is now replacing. A couple of years ago, it was just like, oh, well, it's going to just mess up the creative space, right? And we've seen what has happened to AI art, right? We've seen what's happened to AI music. But it's at the point now where it's taking specific type of jobs that would require education, okay? Years of study within a college institution or a certification. Now, it's one thing to talk about taking away creative or like service level worker jobs, but when you start to take away white collar, more office-based knowledge worker jobs, right? We're taking out like entry level analyst jobs, right? That's what I had when I was just out of undergrad. My job 20 years ago doesn't exist anymore for these major organizations. We're talking accountants. We're talking paralegals to, within a law office, HR coordinators, right? The people who used to just look at your resume. Now you could just put that through AI and just come up with summaries, and it can actually rank them dependent upon the role that's needed, right? And even like middle management roles where they existed to like organize or have analysts take a look at information, that's all now passed up the chain, because now a lot of those jobs is just an AI query. All right. Goldman Sachs also released a report estimating that AI could automate 300 million full-time jobs annually. And the ones that are most at risk is the ones that I mentioned before. Administrative roles is about at 46%, legal work at 44%. Financial analyst roles are also seeing significant displacement as well. All of these top organizations are saying that these things are coming, but are we actively thinking about what is it that we're doing about it? And then also how we're all going to be impacted, especially from a relationship perspective, okay? Because if you just stop and just think about it for a second, all right, this is exactly where gender dynamics come in, all right? Now, I'm not trying to just be mean here or just be dismissive, but the data says what the data says, all right? Women in the workplace are disproportionately concentrated in the exact type of roles that AI is absorbing the fastest, all right?
I just lost my job today. No warning, no nothing. They wouldn't even tell me why. I don't know. I didn't do anything wrong. I have no savings. I have nothing. I just don't. I got in the exit interview and they said, today's gonna be your last day. My manager, my director was on the call. And then they were like, the decision has already been made, so we really don't have anything to hear from you. You're only gonna get paid for the one day you worked in August, and we'll give you your commission check, and that's the last of it. And end the call on me. I'm low. I'm low.
I have another stat for you from the Institute of Women's Policy Research. Women make up about 74% of healthcare worker jobs, 73% of education and training worker jobs, and 70% of in-office or admin support roles. Again, exactly what AI is currently displacing the fastest. And I know what y'all thinking. Probably it's, well, men are going to be impacted by these as well. I mean, even if you look at the numbers in regards to who joined STEM fields, okay, and STEM jobs are being impacted. And I think it's like 3 times as many men are in STEM fields than women. But the difference is that let's say that those jobs go away. Men are more ready, willing, and able to do much more physical labor and intensive jobs or trades: construction, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, trucking, in the warehouse, on the oil rigs, right? The infrastructure work that was necessary to create the cushy society or the civilization that we all enjoy, the society that was civilized enough to even create AI to begin with, okay? Jobs that you need a strong physical human body to show up for in a reality, in a physical world, not a digital world, but a physical world, all right? I was actually having a conversation with one of my homeboys recently, and he has a son in high school. And we were sitting down talking about this whole AI thing and thinking about, what do you tell a kid nowadays to go do with all of this coming? And he feels comfortable with recommending the military to his son right now because, it's a government position, right? You can have a trade within a government position. And we think it's just going to be a lot more job security than getting into something completely digital, right? Because robots can't snake a drain underneath a sink, right? But in reality, even the recommendation of STEM fields, right? Unless you want to go into an AI space or, if your plan is to be within leaderships within these organizations. And if you are not the top of your class, or if you do not, have context that you can, rely on or tap into, it's just getting way more difficult to go into more of an office or a cubicle job site as opposed to a physical job site. And, although AI is mostly digital right now in nature, it's going to take probably another 10 to 15 years where they can put AI into humanoids to do some of these more blue collar jobs. And, it buys men a longer window before we can figure out what's going to happen, right? A significant window, while the white collar workforce will be struggling a lot sooner. Now, I had to paint the picture for you guys in order to understand this, because it is also clear to me that, if you live in your day, you're doing what you do, you might hear a news story there about AI, right? You might hear your boy talking about querying something, right? You might come across it in some form or fashion, but you may not be as clued in or keyed in rather as what I am. All right. Or what is some of the people that are much more forward thinking about what's happening in the economy currently are. All right. But let's tie this all in. All right. Because, and let me be clear before I go into this, right? Because I actually care about the outcome of families and relationships, in contrary to the haters that will watch this channel and just say he hates women or whatever that they say. But nevertheless, for decades now, right? Women, and dare I say, especially the Black modern woman, has been sold a very particular dream. And the dream goes a little bit something like this. You don't need no man. Get your education, get your career, be a boss, be independent, and be a queen. And the right man eventually will manifest itself, will swoop down. But your career, it comes first. Your freedom, that comes first as well. Your money, that comes even before first. All right. And you are enough on your own because you don't need no man. All right. Now, I get it why that message has resonated so much, right, over the past several decades, especially as, media, mainstream media has proliferated, right, in consideration that women are the main purchasers within a household, representing 80% of purchasing household power. And I also get that there were real barriers within our history that women face as they sought for, equality, equal opportunity. But the problem is that this dream that has been continued to market to them from corporations, from media companies, right? It's now gotten to the point where it's not about equality, right? It's about domination through financial interest, right? Getting them into the workforce, make them think, act, feel, and believe that they don't need no man so they can get it up on their own, contribute to taxes, contribute to the society. And as a country, right, we're going to be a lot more productive and a lot more well off because half of our labor is now not at home with much more family oriented obligations, but they're now helping us increase production. More workers mean more labor costs, more income in the household means that there's going to be more spending. And again, when women control the spending, they spend more, okay? And that's not just me making it up. We can bring up studies in order to prove that. So from a business perspective, it makes perfect sense why the advertising is more so pushed towards them because it empowers them to keep buying, all right? So when you see all of this girl boss content and, you know, as a young man growing up in the 90s, right, I would see it all of the time, all right? All of this, I don't need no man anthems, you know, telling them that their highest achievement is within corporate life, you know, all of that other stuff. The fact of the matter is that if you take a look at the state of the union between a man and a woman, it absolutely worked, okay?
Are there so many women today who say they don't need a man?
I mean, because if they want to go 50-50 on things, I just don't need them.
Because there's a lot of bum-ass men out in the world who don't do enough so us women can supply for ourselves now.
Women are better than men. What do men bring to the world? Literally nothing. Women, the vibes, just everything. Everything is brought to by women.
I completely disagree. You say that men bring nothing in the world. Everything you know and love. If you look around the entire infrastructure of our nation, our economy, every building you walk into, the camera that's filming you right now, the microphone you're speaking to, everything is built, maintained, and is still maintained to this day through men. Hardworking.
I love
men.
how he's mansplaining this to me.
No, I'm serious that the way that you are portraying your ideas and opinions is through technology and infrastructure and an economy and a nation that was not only built, but is still maintained to this day by men.
They entered the workforce in massive numbers. They chased those jobs, those office jobs, right? They rose the corporate ranks and the ladders. They chose to get those professional titles because that's what they were told that they need to value. They got all of the student degrees, they got all of the loans, they delayed marriage, delayed children, delayed family formation. And right now, those very jobs or the conclusion of all of that was thought of as successful, those jobs are now evaporating. This was also talked about by Kevin Samuels as well. This is back in like 2020. And I think it was like 900,000 or 1 million jobs were lost, and 80% of those losses were women, right? And I think it was referred to at the time as the she-cession. The she-cession was the precursor to the now AI-driven displacement that is going to happen. Because if we thought that was a lot of job losses before, we ain't seen nothing yet. And we got all of the studies of these consultant agencies that are warning us of what is happening and what is coming on the horizon.
We haven't had work for over a year and a half, haven't paid rent for over a year and a half. And they're going to go back and find out that they've been automated. They've been downsized. Companies haven't lost a lot of money. And in September of 2020, we had something called a she-cession where we lost 880,000 jobs that are female. I'm going to have lots of data this week because you guys have been living in a fantasy land. You think that it's not going to happen. You think there's going to be some kind of bailout. There's going to be something else. There's going to be nothing. People right now are being put on the streets. In Dallas-Fort Worth, the constables are moving people out, putting their stuff on the front yard. You want to know what's coming, ladies? They're decriminalizing the oldest profession in the book. In New York City right now, the governor, the mayor said we're not going after people who are loitering in the streets.
Now, although all of this is happening and it's coming on the horizon, the marketing, the advertising of this type of lifestyle, as well as the benefit of it, no one's really talking about it except for like creators like me who seem to talk about it like almost damn near every other day. But what happens when the marketing of what is successful is being push to young girls and as well as young women. And they come out into the workplace and they find that the jobs are nowhere to be found.
This is the most humbled I've ever felt in my life. I'm literally holding resumes, a stack of them, so that I can go in person to places and say, are you guys hiring? It's honestly a little bit embarrassing because I'm literally applying for like minimum wage jobs, and some of them are being like, we're not hiring, and it's like, what? This is not what I expected. I graduated college with 2 degrees in communications and acting. I speak 3 languages. Oh, this sucks. Like, I just want to be a TikToker if I'm being so for real with you. But I can't be delusional anymore. Like, I literally need to make money. So I'm just going to keep trying.
I mean, what happens when you're already a grown woman and you get laid off from one of these jobs and cannot find a new one, right? And the only, well, more so what's the available jobs is more jobs that are more focused towards men, for male strengths, and not focused on your weaknesses. And you realize that perhaps you were lied to in regards to what it would take for you to be happy and to sustain a family-oriented life through community, through relationship, and through focusing a little bit earlier on what actually would make you happy within that, as opposed to what the marketers told you what would make you happy. And you often find that a lot of these women that have gone on these career paths, because of the focus on the career, they picked up sort of this way of conducting oneself in the workplace that will get them ahead in the workplace. All right, highly competitive, perhaps confrontational when it's needed, right? Harder edges, right? More difficulty in receiving direction, resistance to cooperation if they're on a task or a goal, right? In competition with, you know, other companies or those that might be doing it better, right? And it's not diving into the things that stereotypically men have looked towards women for when figuring out whether or not she's marriageable material. Right now, we have some of the lowest marriage rates ever recorded, as well as some of the highest divorce rates. And Black people are actually leading the pack in that, with literally the worst marriage rate and literally the worst divorce rate, or the highest divorce rates. Now, I want to be clear when I say this, because I think that a lot of modern focused young ladies, when they hear something like that, they associate it with maybe perhaps their defensiveness, but they associate it with it like being less than or being smaller. And I often say this on the channel is that men and women are just different. We can be equally valued, but for very different things, okay? It's not about you being less than. It's about role compatibility. I think a lot of the current dogma, it tries to even out the genders as if we are the same. And biologically, we could just take a look at our hormones and see that we have different chemicals running throughout our body, which are going to make us respond differently to different stimuli. All right. And that stimuli, or our biological needs, is not something that should be ignored. And in fact, once you understand these, it helps you better understand what it takes for a success for the long haul. But when the culture spends years effectively training your opposite to lead, to dominate, to compete in every space that they occupy. And I can't tell you guys the amount of times I go into like game nights or discussion nights and I see men, married men, with their tails tucked between their legs. I mean, I don't put myself in them situations or those spaces anymore, but the amount of times that I see it, I'm just like, damn. So I understand young men rationalizing against it, because it seems as though in order to be within that pact or that unity, you have to become something that you were not before. And in fact, a hollow shell of what you were before. Now, KS talked about this. He was absolutely crucified for it.
Men in general, men worldwide were more masculine because we didn't have feminism. But see, the problem is Black women, your mother's generation and your grandmother's generation, they really failed you guys because they told you didn't need a man. So you can't. Right. Who raised these feminine, weak Black men that you have a problem with? Who raised them? Who raised them? 80% of Black children are born out of wedlock. Who raised them?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
We did.
Who's we?
My mom or whoever my grandparents did.
Black who?
Women.
Thank you.
But go look at the marriage rates. Go look at the divorce rates. They are what they are. Go look at who's filing for divorce at what rates. The data doesn't lie, okay? It's there for a purpose as well as for a reason. Now, everything I'm laying out for you guys, it's absolutely uncomfortable, right? It might sound bleak. And I'm just trying to give you insight in what's happening and the importance of understanding it, okay? Because while it's bleak, there's a flip side that you have to internalize, right? And I'm talking to my fellas, because you're in position right now, okay? The man that has skills, direction, purpose, clarity, you are now in a stronger position than you have been in the past several decades since all of this shit has begun to happen. So let me explain why, all right? When the white collar economy contracts, right, and the corporate safety net that a lot of women have been standing on starts to erode, then the facade goes away. And the value of a man who is stable, grounded, capable, ready, willing, and able goes up. Your value goes up tremendously, okay? And you could think of the dating marketplace as the economic marketplace, supply and demand. It's absolutely real. KS used to say that a dude earning $75K a year is platinum and 6 figures a year is plus.
Gentlemen, understand something. If you are a single man with no children and you are earning $75,000 or more, you are now platinum. Shout out to platinum. If you're making 6 figures or more, you are now diamond level. If you're making $55,000 to $60,000, you are gold. You are far more valuable than you have ever been. And here's the trick. You guys don't know how valuable you are. And that is why so many of my critics and detractors are angry at me, because I am waking men up to their true value. That's why they want me shut up. That's why they want me off this. They don't, because of the impact it's having upon right-thinking men and right-thinking women. It is making it more and more, it is making it less and less possible for men to get bad deals. That's why every day I walk out in this world, I get love from men. Every single day. Shout out to the two young dudes. Hadn't even hit puberty yet. No offense, but y'all still look young to me. They could barely get the words out. Those dudes had to be 14, 15. Those men are going to have a different outcome because they're not going to accept bad deals.
And over the past several years since then, we've seen sort of this kind of inflation. But although people laughed at him for saying those numbers, and there was a whole bunch of debates in there and kind of like, what is a high value man? Look at where we are at right now. Diamond at $75,000 a year, you're damn right when the unemployment rate is going up. When the other is within a workforce, right, or has a job that is easy to be removed, your $75,000 a year plus is platinum as hell. And the economic pressure via AI that is currently building and mounting is what's going to make these calculations even more crazy, right? If you take a look at our economy right now, there's about 9 or 10% of women that are earning $75,000 or more per year. Meanwhile, men dominate skilled trades, right? And a large percentage of the 9% are women that work in cubicles, right? White collar workers, right? Where are they going to go? What are they going to do when those opportunities start to erode? Okay. The men that are making over $75,000, $100,000 per year in the white collar cubicle jobs, they're not scared of getting their hands dirty, right? Go take a vocational school, right? Trade school, a year and a half, something like that, or become an entrepreneur, build a business. And there's certain concepts and facets that make men better business builders over time than women, but that's a different conversation for a different video. So looking at all of this, men will be a lot more adaptable to what is forthcoming. But here's the catch, and what I want you guys also to understand is that you have to know your value, right? No matter what the sexiness of your positions are within the marketplace, you don't need to undersell yourselves. You do not have to accept bad deals because you've been conditioned to think that you do not deserve any better. And that's what I want for the young men to especially hear, right? Because the generation that is coming up right now, if they make the right moves, if they go into trades, right, they build real skills, they look at what is happening and choose different avenues or paths or focuses that will anticipate this forthcoming wave of AI, right? They stay out of crippling debt, right? Just making the smart decisions that will help build their life. They're going to come out the other side of this current economic transition within a position of serious strength. And the men who don't figure this out, similar to the ladies that have less outs within this, right? They're going to get swept up in the same wave that is hitting everybody. Now, if you take a look outside of the U.S., right, there are countries out there that are actually farther along this curve that we can take a look at, right? And a lot of these countries are technologically advanced, more advanced than what we are. You take a look at Japan, you take a look at South Korea, right? They're showing us the preview right now. If you take a look at Japan, which has, the fasting, collapsing birth rate, right? And the young people are just choosing just not to be in relationships with each other. And in fact, I think that a lot of the young men are choosing dolls over young ladies, or like aliens with tentacles and stuff like that via anime. But, it's a aging population, and it doesn't seem that they are creating enough to sustain their population. If you look into a South Korea, right, there's a movement called the 4B movement, where they essentially are rejecting men entirely.
Korean women are dedicated to erasing Korea from the planet because listen to this. I will not give birth to a life that will discriminate against my gender. My own flesh and blood must not become a blade turned against me. If the world born from my body oppresses me, I will not let that world exist. This is the declaration from the Korean feminists, and they are dead ass serious. They started the 4B movement where they rejected marriage, childbirth, dating, schmacks with men. And now Korea has the world's lowest birth rate and is indeed projected to be the first country disappearing from the planet due to population decline. You know what? You gotta respect Korean women's vision.
And you've seen concepts of this being undertaken by some women over here in the West. I see what's happening over there, and as well as the reliance on technology and AI as to be forthcoming of what's going to happen over here, okay? It's the same pressure being applied just within a different culture, right? You have the economic instability, you have misaligned expectations, and you have this cultural message of autonomy that's being pushed, and we are on the exact same trajectory. Actually, a couple of years ago, I believe it was in 2023, it had the lowest recorded birth rate in the U.S. in history. But when you take all of it away, right, and you take a look at how the feminist dogma or the cultural project that has been placed upon us, right, for the last 50, 60 years, right, and you place that now with the gas accelerant of AI, right, it forces the question that I just think too many of us are currently avoiding, which is what will be the family structure? What will it look like when it's going to get harder, right? And the roles are going to have to shift, not due to marketing, but due to just no options. And in fact, I think that the role of the definition of a trad wife is going to come back full swinging here in the next couple of years, because I think, women are adaptable at the end of the day. Back in the days when there was a boat floating into your island and you didn't know what nation this boat was coming from, that's probably got to be one of the most scariest things. The men would go out and would defend that island. But if the men lost to whatever was on that boat, in order for you to survive as a woman, you'd have to be flexible to the new men that are now taking over the land. And through evolutionary biology, the women whose bloodlines continued were the ones that were most flexible. And we see this degree of flexibility for lack of a better term, happening within modern times today. So anyway, I've been talking a lot about the State of the Union in reference to this idea of winter is coming 2.0 with AI. And I think that it's also important to also talk through, you know, the things that you can do to help position yourself for what's going to be coming. All right. So if you're a guy that's watching this, I would say the first thing is that you have to be able to audit your career against the potential of AI displacement, right? If your job is primarily knowledge-based, right, and you're not your own business owner, right, you mostly sit at a computer, you process information, you're an analyst, right, you communicate, you analyze, you need to start thinking about your next moves, not in 5 years, but right now, okay? Because either if you do not get deeper into your specialization to the impact that AI can't absolve it or replicate it easily, you need to start leading your life in a direction that is not towards AI displacement, or develop skill sets that AI cannot touch. I even think about the job that I had that, you know, while I started my YouTube channel, right, I was working for an organization where I was developing features for websites, and it was like conversational user faces. So like chatbot, you know, voice activation, things like that. We had to hire scripters, right, to write down how the actual chatbot widget on the website was going to respond. AI would have absorbed that job. You know, if I was still in there, if I hadn't made this transition into content, I would definitely by now be in a different role. Would I be in? I don't know, but you know, I built something here, okay? The second thing is that I don't care what your degree is in, right? I hear many college educated people that then say, bump this job market is too tough. I'm gonna go check out what this trade stuff is like, right? So if you're in your 20s as well as your 30s, investigate and research getting a trade skill, okay? Even if it's not your primary income right now, right? Having a plumbing license, perhaps, being an HVAC trained this, right? Electrical certification that, right? It's something to fall back on, all right? It's recession proofing, for lack of a better term, all right? And those types of real world tangible skills is going to be where the value will be in sort of this new wave or this next wave. The next thing is that understand your budget, understand your finances, and get discipline, all right? When the economy is pressuring us, right, to afford things that are way more expensive and we have less money now than ever before, then you have to be able to understand where your finances are at, right? Focus on not taking on any new debt. Don't buy anything that you shouldn't be buying or you cannot pay for outright right now, right? Understand how much you need to have in your savings. Diversify the different income streams that are coming in to hedge against the bets of something of an AI being able to replace, right? Just to position yourself more to identify with strength, all right? And also as you identify these things, also understand what's happening out there, all right? You're going to have a lot of women that's going to have to course correct, and right? They will now be more open to consideration for relationships. They now will not play as much when they start talking about what they need and want in first days, this, that, and the third, right? Like, but some of them are going to be doing this because of that flexibility thing that I told you a little bit earlier, because they don't have no choice. A lot of them will have to think through potential homelessness, right? And the struggle within that versus being under the provision and protection of a man. So I say all that to say, ensure that you continue to stand on business and never let your kindness be taken for weakness, all right? Because you're going to encounter a lot of snake oil salesmen that will going to hit you up with the hey, big head text when the rent is due. Now, for the ladies that are currently watching this, and I'm sure I got like maybe 2 or 3 of y'all still left at this particular junction, you know, for the ones that, you know, I consider MTRs, y'all are already way ahead of the damn game. And it's because of the way that you think about men, right? Your understanding of men, your love for men, you're already way ahead of the game. So a lot of y'all, not much to worry about. The ones to worry about is them single ass aunties that continue on blaming everybody else as opposed to themselves for their relationship unsuccess. But much of the advice that I give to the men, you can consider that advice as well for yourself, for preparing yourself, but y'all just gonna have less options. It just is what it is. You're gonna have less options, okay? So within that, if you're in your, 20s, getting up into your 30s, I think that the pill that they sold you of the importance of getting out there and getting it done, they did that for a reason, okay? They did that for a reason. That was to increase the money in their pockets, okay? But what are you doing to increase the happiness within your pockets? It would behoove you, if you haven't figured it out yet, and if you go from relationship to relationship and they all just burn off in smoke, it would behoove you to take a look in the mirror, understand of the type of man that you want, what does that man want, and adjust yourself. And it's going to take time. It's not an overnight thing, especially if you've been lied to for most of your life of what is valuable, or lied to that being selfish and forever accepting of things around you and creating all of these different icks and all of that shit. It's going to take a long time to get up over that, but you're going to have to try. And I say that because winter is in fact coming. It is not a prediction. It is a description, because we are already here. The numbers prove it. And the agency studying this stuff is saying it's going to get worse, not better. But all right, y'all, let me know what you think down up in the comment box down below. Little different video than what I do normally, but I wanted to be able to get all of this off of my chest. I was actually talking to a couple of my homeboys last night, and we were going back and forth, and I was just like, yo, I got to do some content on this. I got to get this all out on wax in order to make my own predictions. Kevin made it 4 years ago. I'm going to make it another prediction about what's going to happen in the next 4 years. And hopefully, we can look back upon this and be able to judge the accuracy within the words that I'm saying to you guys right now. But we got to start preparing for it before it actually becomes true. So stay locked in and let's get active. Until next time, y'all. Peace.
So, without further ado, MTR, cut through the BS like we in charge. No cap with the rappers like steel bars. I'm packing and rapping like here we are. Mediocre tutorial reviews. Like, comment, share my views. Come up and I paid my dues. Big step in my black way shoes. MTR, he break it down, yeah, it's MTR. Check out the sound with his MTR. No one put it down like it's MTR.